Hi everyone. I wanted to make a quick video and start talking this month as we head into eclipse season about the book that I did right prior to the pandemic. Because I've been in the part of my healing journey for the past 3 years where I have crossed over and it's not even shadow work anymore. It's a full-blown initiation process into learning some of the darker sides of spirituality and to walk the path probably that other people have encountered much earlier in their journey than I did. And I think that part of what my path has been up until 2020 was that I was hugely, without knowing it, protected. If you've been following my newsletters or you've seen any of the videos, you know that I'm coming out of a 20-year cycle with the planet Venus. And if you're into astrology, you know that planet Venus, depending on where it's located in someone's charts, can give them a lot of advantages in things like money and love and beauty and all those kinds of, Venus related stuff. So when for me Venus went started its cycle in my charts, it was the same month that I broke up with my long-term boyfriend of 6 years. And he's discussed briefly in my book. He's probably one of the best people that I did date. Very grounded, very conservative, very traditional, also very Catholic, which is a theme going on my healing journey. And I remember making the decision to go to graduate school. And I remember him looking at me. His mother was going through a cancer crisis. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "No, I really think that you should get married and have kids." And truth be told, I didn't know anything about astrology and I didn't know anything about Dharma. I didn't know anything about my life path. I just had this really strong desire to want to do my work through getting my own education. And I was young. And I do think that if my Venus cycle had started maybe a couple years later, that this decision may have been different. But there were things in the relationship now that I've gone through a few rounds, many rounds of awakening, that were not a good fit for me. One of them being I had to give up a job. It was a job in the finance world because he didn't want me working on Sundays. And I remember being very shy and very anxious and just, starting my healing journey at that point. And I didn't have a voice and I was a mess. I was an anxious mess. I definitely had a diagnosis at that time. Was trying to find a therapist, but it really wasn't anything that was readily available. We met when I was going to college. We were long distance, and even though he was a great guy, and I ended up moving, back closer to him and going to school at Sarah Lawrence, which ended up being more local because probably my anxiety and my need for creativity, and also the need probably to be in a more feminine environment, hence going to more of an artistic school than a, regular university. Um, I didn't have the strength that I have now to just say no to that request. So, and I didn't even have the strength to explain to my boss at the time why I couldn't work on Sundays. So because I had anxiety, I completely screwed up a project. And then we just mutually decided it wasn't a good fit. But the reality of that situation was that I felt very pressured. I felt pressured to not work on Sundays, which is the reason why now that I have choice and because I am in tune with the natural energy of the planet, I do choose to work on Sundays because there's a lot of energy, masculine energy, and it's good. I usually get something done. So that's why I offer sessions on Sundays and not Saturdays. And, these are the things that you cycle through over and over again on your healing journey. And it's, I'm not going to sit here and call him an a-hole and all these kinds of, that's not who I am. And that's not what happened. Italian Catholic, had a very traditional family life and wanted to make sure I was available to join his family for Sunday dinners. It's really what that particular conversation was about, but that is a conversation that women all over the world continue to have. And so trying to figure out who you really are when you're young, and then being exposed to a planetary cycle that at the time was more traditional, and being exposed to different religions, which has been my path over a 20-year period. It's a little confusing when you're an empath and potentially a physical medium and have some psychic abilities to figure out who you are versus who someone else is. So we broke up when my Venus cycle started, and that must have been when I was 22 or 23. And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather about whether or not I would follow the yogic path or if I was going to go to graduate school for psychology. And we were on vacation, and, this is part of, what I'm getting to in a financial healing journey, is that we were on a very bougie vacation. My father's side of the family had wealth after building their own business and being entrepreneurs. And so I was exposed to a lot of luxury when I was young from my father's side of the family. So I remember sitting, after a dinner with, wine, and my grandfather having one too many glasses of wine and, doing what you're allowed to do when you're older, and asking what was I going to do after I graduated college. And he brought up yoga. It was the only time we had the conversation. He brought it up because he pointed out my anxiety. And the joke now, when I look back on that conversation, is that I know exactly who I got my anxiety from. A lot of it is on my mom's side, but my grandfather, who was, very successful in his business and what it is that he wanted to do, had a lot of anxiety that came out in a very controlling manner. So being someone who's highly sensitive, being someone who absorbs energy, having no clue that this was going on when I was younger, also was reflecting back to him in the way that I was talking, his anxiety. And also, the dynamic at that time of being in a traditional family where you're looking at the main head of the household of your family as someone who is on a pedestal. I didn't want to disappoint him by saying that I wanted to be a yogi. Education was always really important on both sides of my family, and I was very intellectually driven when I was young, and still am. And I've since learned that it's a spiritual gift that is not always under control unless I meditate. But that was the reason why I chose to go to graduate school. And I think there was thinking back on it now, even though the reality of being in private practice versus going to school for psychology, completely different things. The wisdom in that decision was my soul knowing that here are the two paths. At that time, before the energy shifted in 2007, 2008, I either needed to get married to someone who could manage finances and be a traditional masculine energy person in the household, or I needed to be in a very structured school-like environment, again, masculine energy, until the energy was scheduled to shift. And I believe it shifted in 2008. And I'm talking about energy, Western psychology, and tracking Pluto's cycles. And so in that pivotal moment, when someone who I was very much in love with was pushing me on my decision to go to graduate school, I did not have the wisdom that I have now of the reason why I made the decision that I did. But in hindsight, there was no wrong decision. The universe was just saying, hey, for the next, 7 years, you're going to need to be in an environment that is going to provide you structure. You're going to need the masculine energy to provide structure. And I didn't know that was what was going on, but I thrived. I thrived in graduate school. I loved graduate school. I loved going to class. I loved the people that I met. I loved applying for internship. I loved all the hospitals I worked at. I loved working hard, and just being passionate about what I was doing. And I think my soul was starting the process of doing a lot of the healing work that we're now collectively talking about. I was just doing it in a different way back then because I needed more structure. And I don't, if what I know about yoga now and thinking about who I was back then, given the timing of where we were, I don't think I would have survived those 7 years if I did not have the structure of graduate school in the way that it was created. I think that starting yoga is hard enough as it is. I think you are very lucky if you find the right teacher the first time. And I think by nature of what it's supposed to be, I think that it can be very hard in Western culture to have enough structure for someone who is very much in their feminine energy and needing to be held in a safe space more days of the week than not. Right? So I'm opening up and being very honest that my soul made that decision, and I've questioned it for a long time, and I've questioned it because I've been not super happy with the way my practice has been going, and yet it's been going that way because of my healing journey, and there's change again coming in the world, and it has to change. We are all being asked to change because of what is coming in the future with regard to technology, and we're shifting again to a new cycle, and Aquarius doesn't do tradition, right? So I was trained in a very traditional profession that is going to continue to have to transform to keep up with the needs of human beings. That's just the reality of where we are right now. But when I look at how everything has come to being in the past 20 years, there are no mistakes. My soul knew what she was doing, and she knew, given the level of trauma, which I've outlined in my book, how much trauma I had, relational trauma. I knew I needed to be in a structured environment with very grounded, very traditional people. Yoga was not a good fit for me at that early age. And I think as part of my healing journey in the past 3 years, I think I was shown that, and I think the decision could be different now, and I'm still working some things out and trying to figure out what my path is and what I should be doing with work, and have been exposed to many different things. And I think I'm just gonna have to, go with the flow like the rest of you, but to acknowledge and honor and respect the importance that during that cycle, the outside masculine energy was so important for grounding me to do the very human things I was going to have to do as part of this bigger awakening journey as a woman. And coming out of that groundedness where I was exposed one-to-one with people who had their act together professionally, which then, when the energy shifted, walked me into a 6-year litigation with family members related to money, and that really wrecking my root chakra energy. And so then I had just healed. I had done all that kind of healing, becoming a baby psychologist, trying to heal, my mother's side of the family. And then here comes my father's side of the family saying, okay, that's cute, let's do it again, but now we're doing it in a different way. And that's really what the healing journey is about. And it's figuring out at different times in your life, you're going to be working on the masculine energy versus the feminine energy. And that I would not have gotten through. And that lawsuit, if I had not had the groundedness of being connected to human beings who just did life in a normal way. I don't even want to conjecture about what I would have looked like If I had walked the yoga path and been around people who weren't necessarily super grounded and then had to walk in to do the healing of my financial trauma related on my father's side of the family, I don't think I would have gone through it. So things happen for a reason. The journey unfolds for a reason. And what's been happening, if you haven't been feeling it yet already, is we're going through another process of purging old things. And I have been re-experiencing in my root chakra this old stuff that is remnants of financial PTSD from that time I went through the lawsuit. And it's not that I haven't dealt with it in therapy, because there was therapy around that. It's not that I haven't dealt with it in yoga. It's not that I haven't dealt with it, past life stuff. I know exactly where it comes from, but the physical body also has to let go of this. And then there needs to be some higher level spiritual work around it. So healing is a long journey that usually involves many, many different things. And I'm a firm believer that some of us get triggered on the journey when we are in the feminine energy, especially early on, starting in our 20s, because we're supposed to be mastering the energy of the heart space. It's, yoga science and psychology actually do overlap quite a bit with regard to understanding human development, which may be changing now, but traditionally human development and the development of the chakras actually overlap. So in our 20s, we're supposed to be working on things like love and relationships. So we prepare to deal with a lot of these other more serious adult issues later in life. And we prepare for an awakening in midlife. If everything was going according to plan, that is a sequence and structure that would happen. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I think a lot of us right now experienced relational trauma, which is working itself out collectively as an awakening experience, because we all made similar decisions to what I did 20 years ago and chose a different path. We chose a path related to going to work. We weren't interested in spirituality. The energy was very traditional and conservative. So unless that we were an artist or we knew that was our life path, then we probably haven't had exposure to something like yoga. And that's okay. We just have to recognize that our paths now are coming together for a reason, and there's just a lot of work to do. And my, book talks about relational spirituality. It's just a term that comes from psychology research, right? So it doesn't matter if you talk about it from the yogic perspective. It doesn't matter if you talk about it from a religious perspective. It doesn't matter. The idea behind relational spirituality is simply a mindset. And that mindset, by the way, is something we measure as relationship scientists and people who've done the research for decades, have the ability to measure that based on your language. Right? So I want you to listen very carefully. From a religious perspective, we talk about the word. There's no mistake that infant and child psychology basically spends all its time analyzing the words that you use when you are describing your relationships. Because your relationship to whatever it is that you believe, and there is no right or wrong, whatever it is what manifests in your real world. That's been done from a scientific research. The term comes from examining Christian families, but to be honest, most of the religions have done their own research. This is also related to just basic neuroscience at this particular point. We know that the choice of words is very much representative of your mindset at that particular time. The thing that most of us are experiencing now is the spiritual energy coming in and us learning that some of us are more susceptible to outside influences than others of us. And I have learned and continue to struggle with how sensitive I am, and that I don't always know exactly what is mine and what is someone else's, and I'm still struggling with that. And I can meditate and have things, come to me all the time, and I can, channel something or something feels right, and yet right now things are not as crystal clear as they once were when I wrote that particular book, because I know that there's been things that have been leaving in old stories, and there's just a lot of spiritual energy that's trying to help many of us right now. But it's important for you to know that it doesn't, I don't care what it is. And psychologists in general are trained not to care. We don't care what your spiritual background is. We don't care what your religious background is. We don't care if your spirituality is science. There is a path for everyone. My path, especially after experiencing a 20-year cycle with Venus, has and will always be about relationships. It is one of the, divine feminine. It's a divine feminine trait to be interested in relationships, interested in emotions, interested in relations. This is part of the divine feminine energy that we've been trying to bring back to the planet. And she's always been here. We just don't recognize her as spirituality. We don't recognize her as science. And yet some of the most astonishing scientific research I've ever read comes from people who, have been baby psychologists. And we're sitting here thinking it's amazing that we can communicate with dogs and cats and everyone right now. That comes from the relationship science world, where all of us were trained to communicate with babies. Right? So this is what I was doing 20 years ago, was learning how to speak with babies who can't actually talk back to me. Coming from a family of mothers who didn't know how to mother, I literally became a baby psychologist because people in my family didn't know how to parent at that time. There was so much chaos and so much abuse that was in the family system that was my solution to the crazy. Was, okay, I basically, did a lot of the raising of myself. You guys don't know what you're doing. I know there's a different path, so let me become a baby psychologist. Let me be interested in relationships. So that's how I started my journey. Because I had that background and a very serious amount of training in that, then later on, when this book got written, I wasn't necessarily going to therapy anymore. That's probably something that, will ebb and flow, and it's a good intervention when we're doing root chakra work, right? So right now, if that was something I was seeking, that would, this month would be a good idea to revisit it and, to continue to do some work. But in order to learn, I was asked to try new things. And that's the entire point of the journey, especially when you're doing the masculine side of things, is to go out into the world and to go and explore. So many of us are getting stuck, and I get a lot of referrals. We get stuck on the relational piece, especially right now, because we're confused about spirituality, and we want to do yoga, we want to do meditation, we want to talk to spirit guides, we want to do intuition. We're getting pulled in many different directions. And the thing that always kept me going was just my innate drive to learn. And this is a trait of an Aquarius South node. We've done this so many times. My biggest issue is doing too much learning before teaching, which is definitely something that I'm experiencing now, which is why I forced myself to make this video. Because we just love to learn. And we're a natural born humanitarian. So this is just, we love working one-on-one with people. We love teachers. So this is just a thing that someone with my, chart configuration may find them doing. So before, I wrote this book, I literally made a list of all the things I had done that had got me to the point where I felt really, really good about where I was with my feminine energy. And it took quite a village to get there over a period of time, right? So, many of you might be feeling feeling really good. The energy is moving up, so there's a little bit more of the masculine energy. Okay, I did my masculine energy in psychology school. And then came the shift. And then I was forced to deal with the feminine energy. And then, the past few years has been trying to integrate it and trying to be able to move forward with something new. But we're going through cycles where old things still have to be released. And I don't think most of us really understand that process has to take time, especially when you are sensitive, because it's hard work, right? And it's also going to be work you're not going to be fully able to do if you are taking care of a child or you have other responsibilities right now. The path of healing the feminine energy is not something that everyone is going to be able to do in the same way. So my book is not a how-to manual. It's just a discussion of that I started to awaken when I started examining my relationships. It is a divine feminine way of approaching, what is going on, and being so disappointed in love and going through this, trial and tribulations and thinking that maybe it's a twin flame connection or whatever it is that is being called today, because we keep reinventing terms, and trying to understand everything related to the heart. And the need to not only master the physical body, but it's also the need to master the material plane, and then the need to master intuition. It is a long, long, long process to be able to master all of that. And yet that's what we're scheduled to kind of move forward into. The reason why I don't make how-to videos, even though it's also my astrology chart to do those kinds of things. I don't make how-to videos, and I'm not posting a lot on social media right now, because I firmly believe that in the beginning of this process, you need to have teachers. And so when I sat here trying to decide, looking through my book, given some horrendous experiences I've recently had that are coming out of, spending a few weeks at a toxic yoga studio, and I'm sitting there questioning my path and what it is I wrote, I open that book every day and ask myself, would I have changed anything in it? And the answer is no. It's my journey. I started writing it after a heartbreak. It is definitely about working with relationships and healing the heart, but it's not a how-to manual. It's just an invitation to begin to explore. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope this video helps clarify that what's likely to start happening is that many people are going to be starting to share their journeys, and their journeys are going to have, all different kinds of experiences in it. But my journey was slow, it was steady, and it was gentle on my physical body. I would not have been able to get through the physical healing work if I ended up in a yoga practice or any other kind of body-based healing that moved my body too quickly. It just wasn't going to happen. And I know that the physical healing in my body has also been helped quite a bit through spiritual interventions that I can't explain. So that's it in a nutshell about what relational spirituality is. It's usually a trigger. It's a trigger that in psychology we talk about it as mindset, and talk about your relationships and try to, we help you change your words. We help you change your words. That's what psychology has always been. Now we are trying to help you master the energy. We're trying to help you master your physical body. We're trying to help you in yoga. We try to get your physical body into proper posture and alignment so the energy can just flow, so you can have, discernment over your heart space, and discernment over when you're going to meditate and use your intuition, and discernment of when you're going to work on the material plane. It's supposed to be something that allows you to go back and forth on different, planes of existence when needed, and for you to eventually have choice. And right now it's just really hard because Mama Earth basically is giving us a kick in the butt about needing to do, especially the physical healing work. Otherwise, you're going to be you're choosing to be left behind, or choosing to have a more difficult time than might otherwise be necessary. And because of that, I do think that the financial avenues for people who have not had money before and now have money have opened up, because you need to pay the teachers. And for especially when you're older and you're not going to get on a plane and go to Tibet and climb mountains and do all the kind of things you might have done when you were younger. You're going to need to pay your yoga studio or your psychologist or your coach or whoever it is going to be helping you with the different aspects of your healing, especially when you're older. That's the reality of the reason why we have extra access to funds right now. And those of us that are struggling, and we're struggling because we're also learning. We're learning about the importance of finances, especially if you are in the United States, because there's an upheaval coming, and the United States is the root chakra for the entire world. So if things aren't working there, it causes anxiety for everyone in the world. So you see developing countries trying to come up with a solution because they're not sure what it is that we're doing right now, because they watch social media and all we're doing is basically dance videos and dancing with dogs. So there's a lot of international concern about what the future is going to be based off of, what people see on social media. Yeah, I know that people are doing the work of mastering all these different things, but it just takes time. And, it is just an invitation. You need to choose the things that resonate with who you are. There's not going to be a how to do this healing process manual. People are going to try to sell you that, and there's a lot of things out there for sale that may or may not be great for you, but that's also part of your journey to learn. So there's no judgment. There's no judgment there. I think everyone's journey is basically going to be different, and if you resonate with being someone who's always been connected to the feminine energy, and relationships have just been a really big theme in your life, there's probably a higher level spiritual reason for that. But in the beginning, we can look at it through the lens of psychology and just see. We can start with the words that you're using, or the connection of thoughts that you have to something greater than you, and see where that takes you, or see where meditation takes you, and see what happens when you begin to quiet your mind, or do some basic energy techniques and see if these thoughts are even yours. Because I got to tell you, most of the time right now, they're not mine. I spend a lot of time doing energy clearing and meditation these days, but that's where I am on my path after I have done all this other work. So I do think it's warranted for you to go to teachers. I don't necessarily think it has to be in person for a lot of it, but you may be choosing to do some of that because it's needed, right? So you need to basically go do you. But I am going to encourage you that if you're going through a breakup right now, or you think you're going to go through a breakup right now, or you're watching all the celebrities breaking up, or you're thinking back and old relationships are coming up, this is not by mistake. This is happening for a reason. And if weird synchronicities are happening in online dating apps and you think it's magical, it could be magical. There's usually something else going on with the mindset or with your history that needs to be cleared, that's actually manifesting those things for you. And I have to say that what has been the most eye-opening learning that I have done, and the most healing thing that I have done on the spiritual level after I healed my physical body, which is necessary, is to see the real stories, the energetic connections and the real stories of the reason why you know certain people. And, in the beginning, The spirit world is going to be nice to you. It's going to show you a lot of beautiful things. When it is time, and if it is time, you will be shown the harder things. And if you don't believe in past lives, that's okay too, because there will be a path for you to do this work as well. And so at the end of the day, I think my biggest lesson that I have learned on this journey to date is that there is no right or wrong path. It's only the path that works for you. However, there's a lot of distortion that is out there, especially if you've experienced trauma and you've experienced being taken advantage of, that you will have to face on part of this journey as an avenue for opening up your voice again and taking back your power. So none of the trials and the tribulations happen by accident. They can be really annoying and cause a lot of anger, which I have been dealing with recently, but it's happening. I know it's happening for a reason. And learning some astrology, or learning, if you like yoga philosophy, like whatever it is that you like, then that is what you should be learning. So when you come to a therapy session, it's important, if you want to do this deeper work, to really begin thinking about, okay, what drives me? Is it my relationship? Am I like super relationally oriented? Then that is the path that I call relational spirituality. It's a divine feminine path. Are you super into intuition, opening your psychic skills, and you're doing spirit guide work and all that kind of stuff? Then yeah, there's, meditations that we can do to begin to explore, why your boss is driving you crazy at work. If you're open and you're grounded and you have a meditation practice, there's a lot to learn from the psychic and intuitive world. That is the path. And then if you're in the more of the path where you know that you are doing more, other divine feminine work related to the womb. Maybe you had a child, maybe you didn't have a child. I'm not taking mothers right now for personal healing reasons. But, womb trauma is also a thing, and it's also a legitimate healing path that has other teachings to it. So while my book covers, more of the intuitive stuff and some heart healing stuff and physical stuff like dancing and yoga, and travel and that kind of stuff, a little bit more of the masculine energy stuff, it doesn't dismiss the other stuff. That was just work that I didn't have to do the first time around. Second time around, I had to do some of that work, and I don't know if I want to necessarily talk too much about it, but that stuff will be in a future novel that I just pre-released, that has a little bit of a mention of, womb healing and working with priestesses and things like that. But in terms of my 20-year journey, it was more about the upper chakras and activating the lower chakra through dancing. And my love, which just turned out to be a love of tango, and there's other dances that I've done, but there is nothing like the intimacy associated with tango dancing for healing. So I there's lots of things to try. So I hope that you mindfully make some conscious decisions about what direction you want to go in, regardless if you're spiritual, religious, or scientific, and just keep moving. Thank you for watching. Bye.